Friends, tonight we are going to take you to that cold and dangerous wilderness, where every mistake has a price, and every breath could be your last. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine this: a forest stretching endlessly in every direction. The air so sharp it bites your lungs, the trees groan like ancient guardians, and above them, the stars burn cold and merciless. For a while, you think you've found freedom, a small cabin, a fire at your hearth, and silence all around. But then, winter arrives. This is not a soft snowfall. It kicks the door open, slips under your clothes, and sinks its claws straight into your bones. Your firewood dwindles quickly. Your food hardens into stone. The cabin walls creak as though they might collapse at any moment. And in the dead silence between storms you hear whispers. Is someone there? Or is it just your imagination? Every step is dangerous, with every breath. The fear deepens. This wilderness is testing. Every mistake, every oversight, every decision, could weigh heavily on your life. So dim the lights. Turn up the sound. Follow me back into the cold, where survival is the greatest reward, and a single moment of carelessness could be your last. Are you ready? Then let's begin. 1. The land before the freeze. You arrived in late summer, when the land still felt alive. Grass swayed golden in the breeze, tall as your waist in places. The forest stretched endlessly, an ocean of green that whispered of promise. The rivers ran fast and clear, cold even in August, carrying trout that flashed silver in the shallows. Everywhere you looked, the wilderness seemed generous, if only you knew how to claim it. For a while, you let yourself believe the stories. The ones back east, told by men who claimed you could just put an axe to a tree, a seed to the ground, and fortune would follow. Land was free, they said. Food was plentiful. Out here, you'd be beholden to no one but yourself. And so you came. The journey itself was its own test. Rutted trails that snapped wagon wheels, swollen rivers that swallowed horses, nights on hard ground where the stars felt both beautiful and indifferent. You learned quickly that comfort was a thing left behind with the cobblestones and lamplit streets. Out here, every comfort was something you carved from the land with your own hands. Still, summer was kind. Even early autumn gave you hope. The air turned crisp, and leaves blazed orange and red across the hills. Game was everywhere. Deer moving silent as shadows, turkeys bursting from underbrush in noisy flocks, rabbits darting like arrows. You set snares and practiced with your rifle. You thought yourself capable. The first cabin walls rose slowly, logs stacked with blisters and curses. You chopped until your arms ached, until the axe head rang dull from stones hidden in bark. But you saw progress, and progress felt like triumph. A roof overhead, no matter how leaky, meant you were building something permanent. In those early weeks, you sat by small fires at dusk, watching sparks leap toward the night sky. The forest stretched dark around you, but it didn't scare you yet. Insects sang. Owls hooted. You felt almost at home. You thought winter was far away, but the land knew better. The elders you met along the trail had warned you. Don't wait. Get your wood cut now. Double it, then double it again. Build tight, or the wind will undo you. You nodded politely, maybe even believed them. But deep down, you thought you'd manage. You thought you had time. Then came the first signs. Frost on the grass one morning, so delicate it looked like spun glass. A breath that lingered white in the dawn air. Leaves that once danced fell silent, brittle underfoot. The land whispered, "Hurry," but you didn't yet understand the language of the land. And so, you smiled at the beauty, gathered a few more logs, tightened the cabin walls where you could, and told yourself you'd be ready. The truth? You were not. Because winter wasn't a season out here. It was a predator. And you'd just stepped into its hunting ground. Chapter 2, Trauber doesn't. Arrive gently. It doesn't slip in like a polite guest, knocking at the door. Out here, October storms through the woods, grabs you by the throat, and makes its presence known. One morning you wake and the air feels different, sharper, the kind of cold that settles in your lungs and refuses to leave. The sky has turned a pale, brittle blue, and the sun, when it does rise, sits lower, weaker. Shadows stretch longer. Days already feel shorter. Your cabin stands, but barely. The logs are rough-hewn, gaps stuffed with mud and moss that crumble under your fingers. You run your hand along the wall and feel tiny drafts slip through, little ghosts of wind, reminding you that your work isn't finished. The roof creaks when the breeze picks up, and you imagine the whole thing peeling away in the first real storm. You set about cutting more wood. Always more wood. At first, the rhythm of axe against tree feels satisfying, a beat that carries you through the hours. But the trees aren't giving themselves easily. The ground has hardened. Roots resist. Your palms split open and bleed, and still the woodpile grows slower than you'd like. By mid-October, frost isn't a novelty anymore. It's a warning. Your water freezes in the bucket overnight, a thin layer of ice you have to crack with the back of a spoon. Your breath hangs in front of you even indoors. The dog, if you have one, curls tighter against your legs at night. You keep the fire going as long as you can, but each spark feels like a thief, stealing wood from your future. You start rationing without meaning to. Less meat in the pot, more broth. Fewer candles burned at night, more sitting in the dark, talking to yourself or to the creaking cabin walls. You realize how quickly comfort drains away when every item you own has to serve a purpose. The silence grows heavier, too. The woods that once rang with birdsong now feel empty. The deer have retreated deeper into the forest. Even the river has quieted, its surface beginning to skin over with ice at the edges. The wilderness is holding its breath. Chapter 3. Inside the cabin. Your cabin isn't a home, it's a battlefield, and every creak of the logs, every hiss of the wind through the cracks, reminds you that the enemy is already inside. At first glance, the cabin looks solid enough. 4 walls of stacked logs, a roof that actually keeps most of the rain out, a fireplace glowing faintly in the corner. But you know better. You've built it too fast, too late in the season, and now every mistake waits to punish you. The walls don't meet cleanly. Each log has its own stubborn shape, its own crooked spine, and no matter how you notch and fit them, gaps remain. You stuff those gaps with mud, moss, even strips of old cloth. But when the wind rises, the cabin groans and the chinking crumbles, little flecks falling like snow inside the room. You sit there with cold air nibbling your ankles, feeling the wilderness slip through every seam. The door is worse. Hinges squeak. The wood swells when damp. So, sometimes it won't close at all unless you shoulder it into place. You've wedged scraps of bark in the cracks, but the draft still whistles through like a ghost, trying to sing you to sleep. At night, when the wind howls outside, the door rattles against its frame as though something is trying to come in. And then there's the chimney, that cursed, smoke-belching contraption. You thought a fireplace was just rocks stacked in a corner with an opening to the sky. But the first time you lit it, the smoke rolled back inside and filled the room. Your eyes stung, your lungs burned, and every stitch of clothing smelled like burnt pine for days. You rebuilt it twice already, changing the angle, widening the mouth. Still, half the time, the room looks like a foggy swamp by the time you sit down to eat. The ceiling drips too, not constantly, but enough to drive you mad. When snow melts, water finds every flaw in the roof and drips into pans and buckets you scatter. Around the floor. On one particularly bad night, you woke to find a light dusting of snow on your blanket. For a heartbeat, you thought you'd somehow wandered outside in your sleep. Then you saw the hole above your bed. You patched it with bark and mud the next morning, but deep down, you know the whole roof is temporary at best. Still, the cabin gives you something. A barrier, however flimsy, between you and the wilderness. When the wind screams through the trees, you press your back against the logs and whisper, "Hold together. Just one more night." You start talking to the cabin as if it were a living companion. Not because you're losing your mind, though some days you wonder, but because it's the only thing standing between you and the cold's full fury. You arrange your life around the fire. The bed stays close to it. The food stays closer. You hang damp socks near the hearth, suspend pots from ropes so they don't tip, and keep the woodpile stacked right beside the door. You learn to rank wood like treasure. Fake logs for all-night burns, pine for kindling, twisted sticks for quick sparks. Every decision becomes a calculation of fuel versus time. And in that smoky, drafty, crooked little box, you discover something strange: pride. You know every flaw, every knot in the wood, every board that squeaks underfoot. It's a mess, but it's your mess. When the snow piles up outside and the cabin still stands, you count it as victory. Not comfort, not warmth, just survival. And out here, that's enough. Chapter 4, the cold creeps in. It doesn't happen all at once. The cold doesn't smash through your door like a raider. It slips in quietly, patiently, like a thief who knows you too well. At first, it's little things. Your fingers ache faster when you chop wood. The water bucket you leave by the door grows a thin skin of ice overnight. The cabin floor feels like stone when you step barefoot, and you find yourself keeping your boots on even inside. Then it grows bolder. You wake one morning and see your own breath swirling above you like smoke, even though the fire is still smoldering in the hearth. You notice frost etching delicate white veins across the cracks in the walls, creeping like living roots. The window, what little there is of it, glitters with a sheet of frozen lace, turning the outside world into a blurred, colorless dream. The cold is no longer outside. It has moved in. Your bed becomes an island. Layer upon layer of blankets, furs, and patched cloth weigh you down, but still you shiver. Some nights, the shivering wakes you up, a deep, bone-rattling tremor that no fire seems to touch. You curl tighter, drawing the blankets around your head, whispering to yourself, as if words alone might push the chill away. The cabin begins to feel less like shelter and more like a trap. The logs weep with condensation that freezes into thin crystal skins. You notice it most around the doorframe, ice forming where your warm breath leaks out to the night. Chapter 5. Rationing and hunger food was supposed to be your safety net. When you stacked the shelves in autumn, you thought you had enough. Jars of dried beans, strips of smoked meat, sacks of grain, even a few apples tucked away in straw. You looked at that little mountain of supplies and felt proud. This will last the winter, you told yourself. But now, staring at the shelves in the dim glow of the fire, you see the truth. The mountain has become a hill. The hill a small mound. Every meal cuts it lower, like the axe cutting into your dwindling woodpile. At first, you ate as you pleased. A bowl full of stew, maybe even seconds if the day had been long. But then came the creeping realization. The jars were emptying faster than the weeks were passing. Now you measure everything. A handful of beans, a pinch of salt, a single slice of meat, so thin you can almost see through it. Cooking has turned from comfort into calculation. Each night you stare into the pot, adding more water than food, stirring the thin broth as if movement alone might thicken it. The steam rises, carrying the faint smell of meat or onion, but when you finally taste it, the flavor is only memory. Oasts of meals past. Hunger makes you sharp, restless. You catch yourself licking the spoon long after it's clean, scraping the bottom of the pot with desperate precision. The sound of your stomach growling fills the cabin, louder than the cracking firewood. Some days you pace. Open the shelves, count what remains. Close them again, only to repeat it hours later, as though the jars might refill themselves. The sight of crumbs becomes important, worth saving, worth tucking away in cloth to eat later. You start noticing food in strange places, the dog's portion, the horse's feed. One night you stare too long at the dog, gnawing a bone, and feel a pang of envy. The guilt that follows is worse than the hunger. Dreams turn cruel. You dream of bread, thick, soft loaves, fresh from an oven you never owned. You dream of roasted meat, dripping juices you can almost taste. You wake up salivating, heart pounding, reaching for food that isn't there. The land outside offers little mercy. Traps sometimes come back empty. Once you caught a rabbit, but by the time you skinned and roasted it, you realized it wouldn't even last 2 days. Snow covers every root, every berry bush, as if the earth itself has locked its pantry against you. So, you ration. You cut portions smaller. You go to bed with your stomach aching, convincing yourself that sleep is just another kind of meal, one you can feed on until morning. But hunger changes you. It gnaws at the body, yes, but also at the mind. It makes you quick to anger, slow to think, hollow in ways that no fire or blanket can fill. Sitting by the weak fire, bowl in your lap, you feel the cabin shrinking, your world collapsing down to a single question: will there be enough? And in the silence that follows, you know the answer is as thin as the broth in your pot. Chapter 6. The fire, friend and foe. If the cold is your greatest enemy, then the fire is your only ally. But like all allies in the wilderness, it is fickle, demanding, and sometimes dangerous. At first, the fire feels like salvation. The orange glow dances across the log walls, painting shadows that almost look alive. You stretch your hands close, and for a few precious minutes, the ache in your bones eases. The crackle of burning wood is the closest thing you have to company. A sound that reminds you that something, at least, is still alive in this frozen world. But fire doesn't give freely. It takes. Every flame you feed is another log gone from your shrinking woodpile. You measure the days not by the sun, hidden behind gray skies, but by how much wood you've burned. The pile by the door grows smaller, and with each trip into the snow to gather more, the task feels heavier, the forest darker. You begin to see your woodpile not as fuel, but as time itself. Each log a countdown toward the end of winter, or the end of you. The fire also betrays you. Some nights it roars too high, sending sparks into the air. You sit awake, eyes wide, praying they don't catch on the roof. Other nights it sulks, smoke curling back into the cabin, stinging your eyes, choking your lungs. The chimney was never built right, and sometimes you swear the fire enjoys tormenting you, as if mocking your clumsy craftsmanship. Then there is the fear of losing it. On stormy nights, when the wind howls and snow drives through every crack, you stare at the flames as though willing them to live. If they die, you know you will follow. Every ember becomes sacred, every spark a fragile heartbeat. You guard them as jealously as treasure. There are times, though, when the fire feels less like a tool and more like a mirror. You watch it flicker and twist, bright one moment, weak the next. You see yourself in it, burning, yes, but never certain for how long. Chapter 7. Snowfall and storms. Snow doesn't fall gently here. It doesn't drift like feathers or paint the world in softness the way city folk imagine. Out here, snow is an army. It marches from the sky in endless waves, smothering everything in its path. The first storm catches you unprepared. You wake to the sound of the wind howling through the trees, a sound like a living thing. Wild, furious, merciless. The cabin walls groan as though the storm is leaning against them, testing their strength. Snow drives sideways, rattling against the logs, slipping in through every crack and seam. By noon, The door won't open more than a hand's width before a wall of white pushes back. You dig and claw until your fingers are raw just to clear a narrow path outside. But by the time you return with an armful of firewood, the wind has erased your work, filling the gap as if mocking your effort. Inside, the world shrinks even smaller. The fire hisses as stray flakes sneak down the chimney. The light filtering through the frost-crusted window turns gray, then darker still, until day and night feel the same. You sit in the dim glow of the hearth, listening to the storm rage, counting the seconds between each groan of the roof. The storm doesn't just bury your cabin, it buries your mind. Hours blur into each other. You lose track of time, unsure if it's been 1 day or 3. Hunger and cold press closer, but it's the silence between gusts that unsettles you most. In those rare moments when the wind pauses, the world feels dead, suffocated beneath the weight of snow. When at last the storm breaks, you step outside into a world unrecognizable. Trees bent low under the weight, branches snapped like bones. The cabin, half swallowed, looks less like a home and more like a coffin. And all around, the snow stretches without end, a vast white desert where nothing moves, nothing breathes. You realize then that the storm hasn't ended. It's only retreated, gathering its strength, waiting to return. Out here, storms aren't visitors. They are rulers. And you are just one more subject, clinging to survival in their frozen kingdom. Chapter 8. The clothing of survival fashion on the frontier isn't about style. It's about survival. Out here, what you wear can mean the difference between life and death. The cold is relentless, and every layer of fabric or fur is another fragile barrier keeping it from crawling deeper into your bones. You begin the day by piling on every scrap of clothing you own. Wool socks, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 pairs, pulled over each other until your boots barely fit. Shirts layered until your arms feel like stiff bundles of rope. An old flannel wrapped around your chest, then another, patched with crude stitches from nights spent sewing by firelight. Wool becomes your best friend. Thick, scratchy, heavy wool. It holds warmth even when damp, and in the frontier. Winter, everything is damp, but wool alone won't save you. That's where the pelts come in. Rabbit, raccoon, fox, anything you can trap and skin becomes another shield. You stitch them together with rawhide or twine, turning scraps of fur into crude coats, mittens, and hats. Nature already solved the problem of cold. You're just borrowing her designs. The result isn't elegant. You look more like a walking scarecrow than a pioneer. Layers hang unevenly, patched with leather strips, frayed cuffs, and bits of burlap. But when the wind claws at your face and the snow lashes your back, you're grateful for every stitch. Out here, vanity has no place. You sleep in your clothes, too. Always. Taking them off means risking waking up frozen stiff before dawn. The only thing you ever remove are your boots, and only if you're certain they'll be dry by morning. Wet boots are a death sentence. More than one settler's diary records waking to find toes blackened from frostbite simply because their boots froze overnight. Your outermost layer is always the most critical. A heavy wool coat, lined with fur if you're lucky, becomes a second skin. Gloves, stitched from animal hides, stiffen in the cold, but they keep your fingers intact. Scarves or strips of cloth wrap around your face until only your eyes remain exposed. Eyes that freeze with tears when the wind cuts too sharp. And still, despite everything, the cold finds a way in. Through the seams. Through the cuffs. Through the collar. It sneaks under your hat and bites at your ears. You tug the layers tighter, adjust your belt, pull the blanket shawl closer, but you know you're only delaying the inevitable. Every day, dressing becomes an armor ritual. Every night, you fall asleep in the same gear, praying it holds until morning. And slowly, you stop thinking of your clothes as garments. They are walls, they are shields, they are the final defense between you and the endless frontier winter. Chapter 9. Tools and Firewood as Treasure on the Frontier. Wealth isn't measured in coins or land deeds, it's measured in woodpiles. Out here, firewood is gold, silver, and insurance rolled into one. Without it, nothing else matters. Not your food, not your cabin, not your strength. Not your cabin, not your strength. Because once the fire dies, you follow soon after. You start to obsess over it. Every waking hour becomes a calculation. Do I have enough wood to last the night? Can I chop more before the sun dips behind the ridge? How much will the storm take from me tomorrow? Your axe is your crown jewel. The edge must stay sharp, the handle oiled and uncracked. You don't just carry it, you live with it. The sound of it biting into frozen logs is your drumbeat, your heartbeat, the proof that you're still fighting back against the cold. When the head loosens from the handle, you panic like someone losing a limb. Repairing it takes precious time and skill you barely have, but it must be done. The woods around your cabin transform into a ledger of survival. You learn the difference between green wood and seasoned wood by sight, smell, and sound. Chop green wood and you'll pay for it in smoke that chokes your lungs and blackens your ceiling. Burn seasoned oak or hickory, and the fire will last the night, steady and strong. Pine makes quick kindling, but too much of it crackles sparks across your floor like a line of gunfire. You stack the logs carefully, ranking them by size and dryness. Small sticks for starting, mid-sized pieces for steady burn, thick rounds for overnight. Each pile is a little bank account, and every withdrawal is a risk. If you waste wood, you waste life. Even tools themselves become treasure. A spare saw blade, a sharpening stone, an extra length of rope. These are riches in a land that offers no stores, no easy replacements. When a handle breaks, you carve a new one, cursing the lost hours, but thanking the fact that you had the foresight to keep spare wood indoors. There's no romance in it, just repetition. Chop, stack, burn, repeat. Your hands blister, then harden. Your shoulders ache, then grow strong. You measure days not by the sun, but by the height of the pile near your door. And every night, when you feed another log into the fire and watch it catch, you feel a momentary rush of relief, like dropping coins into a chest you thought was empty. Firewood is treasure. The axe is your key. And every swing is a gamble with survival. Out here, that's the only economy that matters. Chapter 10. Cabin Modifications and Tricks for Warmth. By now, your cabin isn't just a shelter, it's a battlefield. Every log, every crack, every seam is another opening where the cold tries to break in. You learn fast that survival doesn't come from building once. It comes from constant patchwork, constant invention, constant bargaining with the elements. The walls that looked so solid in autumn now leak drafts like sieves. You stuff the gaps with moss, clay, mud, even rags torn from old shirts. When the wind howls and blows your stuffing back onto the floor, you try again, pressing it deeper, packing it tighter. Some settlers even mixed ashes with mud for insulation. A grim recipe, but one that bought a few more degrees of comfort. Windows, luxury. If you were smart, you never bothered with glass. Instead, you stretched greased paper or thin sheets of animal bladder across the openings. They let in a weak, ghostly light during the day, but at least they keep out most of the wind. At night, you block them with spare boards or furs, anything to trap the warmth inside. The roof becomes another daily worry. Snow piles heavy, bending the logs until they groan like old bones. Sometimes you climb up with a broom or stick, knocking loose the weight before it collapses. One slip, and you're buried. One mistake, and the roof caves in. You mutter prayers. While sweeping, asking the cabin itself to hold together for just one more night. Inside, you reorganize everything for survival. The bed gets shoved closer to the hearth, blankets layered on top until you're sleeping under a mountain of fabric and fur. Food is kept near the fire, not for convenience, but to stop it from freezing solid. You keep a barrel of melted snow inside, though every morning it crusts over with ice anyway. Hooks in the rafters hold drying socks, mittens, and meat. Every inch of space has a purpose now. The fire becomes the cabin's heart, and you arrange your world around it. Firewood stacked closest to the door, blankets spread where sparks can't reach, pots balanced on stones to avoid tipping. You even learn tricks. Hot rocks wrapped in cloth to warm your bed. Glowing coals buried in ashes to smolder until morning. And slowly, the cabin itself starts to feel alive. It creaks in the cold, shifts with the frost, moans when the wind pushes against it. Some nights, the noises sound almost human. You find yourself whispering to it, "Hold together, just one more night."